All politics are national. Democrats lead the generic congressional ballot in 2026 already. Hello, this is Robert Romano, Executive Director with Americans for Limited Government and Americans for Limited Government Foundation. Hit that subscribe button. Today, we're going to be talking about, believe it or not, the 2026 congressional midterm elections. There's already polls coming out. And so far, Democrats are leading the last 6 generic congressional ballot polls, which actually turn out to be a fairly reliable measure of how you should, expect the midterm elections to go. Not throughout the entire year or even for the entire 2-year duration. Usually you want to focus on the polls that are coming out in September and October of the election year that's going to factor into the real clear polling average that generally tends to say, okay, who's doing well in the polls leading up to the midterm elections? And that's the party that usually wins. And that's been true since I've got polls for midterms going back to 2002. So certainly for the past 20 years. But if you go back even further and just look at the national popular vote, the party that won the national popular vote for the House ended up winning the House about 28 times out of 30. So I think this is very interesting. Just as we kind of head into our, the Republicans are still talking about passing their very first budget for 2025. Republicans are still coming off the highs of winning the election in 2024 with President Donald Trump's historic victory, plus winning the House and the Senate. Reclaiming the White House and the Senate was actually rather unlikely for Republicans with a Democrat first-term administration that was Joe Biden, but then he stepped aside because inflation was too high, the border was too chaotic, and he was too enfeebled to keep on running. And so Kamala Harris, his vice president, ran in his stead, and it was too little too late. Donald Trump won relatively easily. And I argue, the inflation kind of told the tale of that, which is when inflation outpaces incomes, as it did in for Gerald Ford when he was running for re-election in 1976, Jimmy Carter when he was running for re-election in 1980, George Herbert Walker Bush in 1992. And Joe Biden in 2020. All 4 of them were one-term presidents because inflation was outpacing incomes at least some duration of their presidency, and that kind of told the tale. So Republicans, they come sweep into power. They're looking to pass their first budget, their first tax bill. This is going to be tax cuts, no tax on tips, things that President Trump campaigned on, plus border security. I think that that'll probably be passing, relatively soon. They're talking about one big, beautiful bill. It's going to be budget reconciliation. That process has already been initiated. But I better share my screen here. It looks like I forgot to push that button. And so we'll share the entire screen. Come over here. We'll share my piece that we're going to be talking about today. Actually, we're going to unshare that because we need to make sure that we're going to share some audio too, giving you a little behind the scenes of what it takes to launch stuff in StreamYard here. Okay, we've got the audio. Now we'll be able to share the screen. Democrats lead generic congressional ballot, just like they did in 2018 and 2006 with a Republican in the White House. And so here's Hakeem Jeffries speaking as Speaker Mike Johnson was about to be sworn in as the Speaker of the House, as he is right now. And he gives a speech that day. But here we see now that Hakeem Jeffries might be the next probable speaker. If Democrats win the House in 2026, it seems rather likely they would say, okay, Leader Jeffries will be the next speaker. So maybe we're gonna listen to. I want you to hear from him. You might not be familiar with Hakeem Jeffries. And so he's the Democrat House Minority Leader right now. And if the Democrats win the House in 2026, he's probably going to be the House Speaker. So let's jump over to his. This is him speaking that day, as Speaker Johnson is about to be sworn into office. So let's take a listen to that.
So let me be clear. Social Security and Medicare are not entitlement programs. They are earned benefits. Hardworking American taxpayers pay in to Social Security and Medicare every day, every week, every month, every year throughout their entire adult life. They've earned those benefits, worked hard for those benefits, and deserve those benefits. So as Democrats, our promise to the American people is that we will fight hard to make sure that no one in this town takes away Social Security or Medicare from the American people. Not now, not ever. No means never. So
Okay, so that was on the first day of Congress in 2025. And there's actually him speaking at a town hall. He has a post on April 16 saying Republicans are running away from town hall meetings. House Democrats are leaning into them. Save Social Security. Let's go full screen here. Here's Hakeem Jeffries at a town hall.
this unprecedented assault on Social Security by people who think that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. It's not a Ponzi scheme. Project 2025 is a Ponzi scheme. So part of the assault is to try to close offices, as you pointed out. They are increasing wait times, and they are denying people the ability to receive the benefits that you have earned, because Social Security is not an entitlement program, it's an earned benefit. An earned benefit that you've paid into throughout your entire life. Now, they have put several offices on the closure list, but we have stopped them from closing a single office in New York City. This unprecedented assault.
Okay, there's Hakeem Jeffries, and you can see a consistent issue selection here. He wants to talk about Social Security. So let's talk about some reasons, though, regardless of the issues that the Democrats are talking about in 2025 and 2026, why they're likely to pick up seats in the House of Representatives in 2026. If nothing else, they're going to pick up seats. Let's make the case that Democrats will win more seats than they lose in 2026 based upon historical patterns. 2018 and 2006 with a Republican in the White House, the incumbent White House party tends to lose seats in midterm congressional elections. And this is a fairly well-known attribute of our political system. But don't look now, but believe it or not, just 3 months into office, we have already experienced 6% of President Donald Trump's second term. By the end of the year, it will have been 25%. And in 2026, the country will once again be swept up into the political cycle of periodic elections with the congressional midterms looming. Right now, the generic congressional ballot shows Democrats ahead in the national average of polls taken for 2026 compiled by realclearpolling.com. And you can see that right here. Democrats are leading the generic congressional ballot. We have past 6 polls, the Democrats have been leading. Right now, it's about 45.8% to 44.3%. And so that seems significant. The Democrats are leading the past 6 polls. CNBC, Economist, YouGov, Signal, Wall Street Journal, NBC News, and Emerson all tend to take regular polling during the presidential election as well. So you're probably saying, the polls might be wrong. Maybe they are. Maybe they are. Let's see how that stacks up over time. Even at this early stage, Republicans are still working on their tax cut and border security budget bill, for crying out loud. It is, in fact, not too early to begin polling for the midterms. And sure enough, pollsters are already taking up the task. That is because the usual reliable measure for who's ahead is the generic congressional ballot, simply asking voters which party they intend to support in the next round of elections. Now, how reliable is the generic congressional ballot? Well, the average of generic congressional ballot polls all predicted the winners of the 2002, the 2006, the 2010, the 2014, the 2018, and the 2022 midterm elections. So let's go back through time here. Here's 2022, most recent midterm elections. Republicans were favored to win. And in the polls, it said 48% to 45.5%. Well, Republicans did win the national popular vote in the House, 50.6% to 47.8%. And they won majority in the House. Okay, let's go back to 2018. This time with President Donald Trump in office, Democrats were favored to win in the polls, 49.7% to 42.4%. Sure enough, they win the national popular vote for the House, 53.3% to 44.9%, and they win the House majority. Go back to 2014. Barack Obama's the president. Republicans are favored to win in the polls, 45.6% to 43.2%. And sure enough, Republicans win the House, 51.4% to 45.7%. And they win the House majority. They win the popular vote and the majority. Go back to 2010. Barack Obama's the president. We're in the midterms. Republicans are favored to win, 50.7% to 41.3%. And sure enough, they win the national popular vote in the House, 51.6% to 44.8%. And they win the House majority. Go back to 2006. George W. Bush is the president. Democrats are favored to win the national popular vote and the House of Representatives for 52.1% to 40.6%. And sure enough, they win 52% to 44.1%. And they win the House majority. And we go back to 2002. This was rather unusual. We had a Republican in the White House, but the Republicans were favored to win the polls, 47.7% to 46% over the Democrats. And sure enough, the Republicans win the House of Representatives in 2002, 49.6% to 45%. And the polls favored them. So even in the rare instance where the White House incumbent party shouldn't really have been favored to win the midterm elections following 9/11, and in the war on terrorism, George W. Bush was very popular, and he was making the political case that Republicans needed more seats in the House and the Senate in order to successfully prosecute the war on terrorism. And this apparently was persuasive. 9/11 was persuasive that Republicans needed bigger majorities. And so they got bigger majorities that year in 2002. One of the very rare instances where the White House incumbent party in the past century has beaten the midterm jinx. And we're going to go through all of the midterm elections over the past century or so. And we'll get to that. So let's now look at some of this. We've gone through the batch of polls, how the Republicans and the Democrats were favored generally to win the midterm elections when the White House was occupied by the opposing party. So the polls in general, though, from 2002 all the way to 2022 have accurately stated who was going to win the congressional midterms using the generic congressional ballot. So they're a fairly reliable measure during midterm elections and can even predict the rare, unusual event where the White House incumbent party is going to win the midterm elections. In fact, if you look at midterm elections dating back to 1906 through 2022, the party that occupied the White House lost seats in the House 27 out of 30 times, or 90% of the time. And in years with losses, those losses average 34 seats. It was only overcome this trend in 1934, 1998, and 2002. And the exigent events were the Great Depression, Monica Lewinsky, and the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks, all acting as exigent events. Another edge case is 1962, wherein Democrats only lost 3 seats in the House, which came within weeks of the Cuban Missile Crisis being resolved. I'll pull up my Excel sheet here. I keep updating this every 4 to 8 years, depending on when there's midterm elections. But you can see in midterm elections going way, way, way back, all the way to 1906. Here's the House seats, net gain or loss by midterms. And you can see negative 26, negative 56, negative 61, 22, 77, 9, 52. There's 1934, where Democrats actually pick up seats in the midterms, rather unusually, but voters were still blaming Republicans for the Great Depression, so Democrats pick up seats there. Otherwise, they were losing seats, 72 seats in 1938, 45 seats in 1942, 54 seats in 1946. Republicans actually picked up a majority in the House of Representatives in 1946. Didn't keep it for long, though. In 1950, Democrats by then had the House of Representatives back after Harry Truman got elected. For his second term, he had replaced Franklin Roosevelt, who died while in office. But let's just add all these up. Let's go down. We'll just do an average here, and let's see. Can we see the average? The average is actually, oh no, can I move that? Yeah, I can move that. Okay, so the average loss, if you take out now, you have to take out 1934, 1998, and 2002. Let's do that. There you go. And then you can see that the average is 34.8 seats. In the Senate, it's a little bit better odds. About 2/3 of the time, the incumbent party will lose seats in the Senate, but there are more exceptions to that. And it really depends on what's coming up, because only 1/3 of the Senate comes up every 2 years. So it could be a bunch of red states. I think in 2026, Republicans will be defending a lot of red states, which might favor them to actually hold on to the Senate in 2026. Very similar to 2018, where Republicans actually picked up 2 seats in the Senate. Democrats actually picked up a seat in the Senate as well in 2022. In 2002, Republicans had picked up 2 Senate seats as well, and they had picked up 8 House seats. So 1998, Democrats pick up 4 House seats and lose 0 Senate seats. And then in the 1934 case, they pick up 9 seats in the House and 9 seats in the Senate. So even if you somehow, if you're Donald Trump, you manage to beat the midterm jinx, the high watermark is maybe you pick up 9 seats in the House, maybe you pick up 8 seats in the House, or 4 seats in the House. And those are the exceptions. Or generally speaking, you're going to lose seats. And usually you lose about at least 3 seats. 1962 would be the low watermark for losses in the House of Representatives. Even then, Republicans would lose a majority in the House. They only have 3 seats to lose right now. So that being the case, if you just go by the averages, there's a 90% likelihood the House of Republicans will lose the majority in 2026, no matter what happens, unless there's an exigent event like the Cuban Missile Crisis or the Great Depression or 9/11 or Monica Lewinsky, some big scandal or something like that. Then, you might actually see Hakeem Jeffries is most likely going to be the next Speaker of the House. The general rule favoring the opposition in midterms is all James Madison's constitutional scheme of periodic elections, explicitly designed to frustrate the ability of majorities to get things done. But midterms are generally a turnout affair, wherein the opposition party, being out of power, has more of a motivation to vote, and so they tend to do relatively better, picking up seats, but not always majorities. Sometimes you pick up seats, but you didn't, the other party had such a big majority, you can't possibly pick up the majority. Democrats, though, are in striking distance, so they seem to be likely to pick up a majority if they pick up seats, which is to say they'll probably pick up at least 3 seats, because no one's ever picked up, fewer seats than that without actually losing seats. Now, to do that, the popular vote itself is a reliable gauge of who won the majority in the House of Representatives. That is to say, if you win the national popular vote in the House, as we were going over, if you're winning the generic congressional ballot, you're likely going to win the national popular vote for the House of Representatives. And if you win the national popular vote in the House of Representatives, chances are in 28 out of 30 midterm elections from 1906 to 2022, or 93% of cases, the party that won the national popular vote for the House also won the majority for the House of Representatives. And so we're going to go through all these cases. And there were only 2 exceptions, 1914 and 1942. But now let's, as Warner Wolf would say, let's go to the videotape. Let's look at every single midterm election from 1906 to 2022. I've got them all pulled up here. Here's 1906. We could zoom in a little bit. Hold on a second. Okay, you can see that a little better. Here's 1906. Republicans win the national popular vote at 50.9% to 43.6%, and they win the majority. They lost seats that time, but they won the popular vote, so they win the majority. Okay, 1910. Democrats are winning the popular vote, and they're winning the House majority, 46.7% to 4. This one was close, 46.5%. But they win the popular vote, they win the majority, 227 to 161. Here's 1914. Woodrow Wilson is the president, and you have Democrats losing the popular vote, but still winning the House. This was one of the rare instances I was talking about, 1914 and 1942. So Republicans win the popular vote, 5.9 million to 5.8 million. They pick up 62 seats. The problem was they probably would have won a House majority, but they only started out with 134 seats. So even picking up 62 seats, it wasn't, which is huge. That's a huge number, well above the 34.8 seat pickup average that we note over this entire period of time. But they only went from 134 seats to 196 seats. So they don't win the majority. So that's one of the exceptions, one of the 7% of exceptions. Here's 1918. And, you have Democrats are losing seats. Republicans are picking up seats. And you have 6.6 million voting for Republicans and 5.4 million voting for Democrats. Republicans win the majority, 240 seats to 192 seats. This was during Woodrow Wilson's second term. Then we go to 1922. Republicans are in the White House now, and so Democrats are going to start winning. This is during Warren Harding's term of office. And the Republicans, although they lose seats, they lose 76 seats, they win the popular vote, 10.5 million to 9.1 million. And therefore, they win the House of Representatives majority, 225 to 207. So if you win the popular vote nationally, you tend to win the majority. Very important point to consider. Okay, so 1926, we're in Calvin Coolidge's second term. And once again, Republicans win a majority of the popular vote in the House, 11.6 million to 8.1 million. And they win the House majority, 238 to 194. Here is 1930. We're in Herbert Hoover's term of office. And Republicans win the majority vote in the House. And they win the majority very slimly in the House, 218 to 216. The popular vote was 13.1 million to 11 million. Now we fast forward to 1934. And this is one of the times where the incumbent party actually picks up seats in the House. And they're going to win the popular vote, 17.5 million to 13.4 million. The Democrats, they pick up 9 seats, and they win the House majority, 322 to 103. Republicans were being wiped out almost to the point of extinction in the Great Depression, following the market crashes and deflation and unemployment going to 25%. And so you can see that Democrats had super duper majorities during the 1930s here. And we're still got Franklin Roosevelt in office in 1938, the next midterm elections that come up. And Democrats win the popular vote, 17.7 million to 17.2 million. Republicans are chipping away, though, at the Democrats' majority. They pick up 81 seats, but they were so far behind. That's not enough to win a majority. Plus, they didn't win the popular vote. Democrats win the popular vote, and they win the majority, 262 to 169. So we fast forward now to 1942. You still have Franklin Roosevelt. He's in the middle of his third term now. And Democrats don't win the popular vote. Republicans win the popular vote. And this was the other exception that I told you about, where you can win the popular vote nationally in the House of Representatives during a midterm election, but be so far behind. You have the Democrats had 105-seat majority going into this election. Republicans pick up 47 seats. That's above the average. They win the popular vote, but it's not enough to win the majority. Democrats win the majority, 222 to 209. So that might be a politics or local example. But so we have the exceptions, 1914, 1942. So let's look at the rest of them now. 1946, this was 19 months after Harry Truman assumed office. And Republicans are going to win the popular vote. 18.4 million to 15.5 million. They pick up 55 seats and they win the majority, 246 to 188. We fast forward to 1950, Harry Truman's second term in office. Republicans are picking up seats, but Democrats actually pick up a majority of the popular vote and a majority in the House of Representatives, 19.9 million to 19.7 million, and they win the House, 235 to 199. Go to 1954. Now we have Dwight Eisenhower, popular Republican president, running within the midterms, and he's going to lose seats. He had won the trifecta in 1952, similar to Donald Trump in 2017 or 2016 and 2024. But he's going to lose the House of Representatives because Democrats won the majority of the popular vote for the House of Representatives, 22.3 million to 20 million. And the Democrats win the majority, 232 to 203. Here's 1958, Eisenhower's second midterms after winning the 1956 re-election bid relatively easily over Adlai Stevenson. And Democrats once again win the popular vote for the House, 25.6 million to 19.9 million. And they win the House majority, 283 to 153, pick up 49 seats. Not a bad showing for Democrats in 1958. Then we go to 1962. John Kennedy just resolved the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is one of the edge cases I told you about. And Democrats only lose 3 seats in the House, but they win the popular vote, 26.8 million to 24.1 million. And they win the House majority once again, 259 to 176. We go to 1966 during Lyndon Baines Johnson's midterms. After Kennedy was assassinated in 1963, Johnson wins the election in 1964 very easily over Barry Goldwater. And Democrats are going to lose seats. Republicans pick up 47 seats, but they only started out with 140 seats. But Democrats win the popular vote, 26.9 million to 25.5 million. And they win the House majority, 248 to 187. Then we fast forward to 1970. Richard Nixon is now the president, Republican, and this is his first midterm. And Republicans are going to lose seats. And Democrats win the popular vote, 29 million to 24.3 million, and they win the House majority, 255 to 180. Let's keep moving forward here. 1974. This is during, let's see, I think Nixon's already gone here. So now we're into Gerald Ford. Is the president now. Richard Nixon is out. And so this is Gerald Ford's first midterm after Richard Nixon had easily won re-election in 1972 with 49 states, a historic victory by every standard. And Democrats are going to, as you might imagine, following Watergate, pick up about 49 seats, and they win the popular vote, 30 million to 21.2 million. And 291 seats to 144 seats. And then you jump forward to Jimmy Carter's first midterm in 1978 after defeating Gerald Ford in 1976, who had a problem with inflation. He had a recession. He had inflation at least some point during Ford's term of office, outpacing incomes. This would be a problem that would bite him in the rear end as well. And Democrats lose seats in the House. Republicans pick up 14 seats in the midterms of 1978, not enough to win a majority. Democrats win the majority of both the popular vote and the seats at stake, 29.3 million to 24.4 million. And so the seats won were 277 to 157. And you jump to 1982. Now, Ronald Reagan is the president. Jimmy Carter, turns out he had a problem with inflation, outpacing incomes too. And he had a recession in the 1980 election. And so Ronald Reagan trounces him in a landslide. He wins 44 states. And then we get to Reagan's first midterms, and he's got a recession to deal with. He's got double-digit unemployment. And Republicans are going to lose seats. They lose 26 seats in the House. Democrats win the popular vote for the House of Representatives, 35.2 million to 27.6 million. And they win 269 seats to 165 seats. We jump forward to Reagan's second midterm after winning 49 states over Walter Mondale in the 1984 election. We get to Ronald Reagan's second midterm election, and Republicans lose seats. They lose 4 seats. Democrats pick up 5 seats. and they win the popular vote. Democrats 32.4 million to 26.5 million. Democrats win the majority, 258 to 177. We jump to 1990. George Herbert Walker Bush is now the president, succeeding Ronald Reagan after defeating Michael Dukakis in a pretty substantial landslide, 40 plus states in 1988. And we get to Bush's first midterm, and he loses seats. He loses 8 seats. Democrats pick up 7 seats. And the popular vote is 32.4 million for Democrats to 27.6 million for Republicans. Democrats win the majority, 267 to 167, 100-seat majority. Headed into the 1992, where now Bush is going to get a recession. He's going to have inflation outpacing incomes, and out goes Bush. And then Bill Clinton is the president, and we get to his first midterms. And we see Republicans win the majority. They win the popular vote, 36.3 million to 31.5 million. They pick up 54 seats, and they win the congressional majority, 230 to 204. This was the first time since the 1950s, since 1952, that they had won a majority in the House of Representatives. And then we jump to 1998, Bill Clinton's second midterm after being easily reelected in 1996 over Bob Dole. With Ross Perot once again on the ballot, Republicans win the majority. They win the majority. They win the popular vote, but they lose seats. This is one of the other rare instances where the White House incumbent party actually picks up seats. And maybe the voters were upset at Republicans for wasting everyone's time with the impeachment of Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, something like that. Republicans lose 4 seats. But they won the popular vote, 32.2 million to 31.5 million, and they win the House majority, 223 to 211. And then we jump to 2002, another rare midterm where the White House incumbent party actually picks up seats. George W. Bush is the president now. 9/11 just happened, and America is headed to war in Iraq. And the American people say Republicans need more seats in the House. So they send more Republicans to the House. And Republicans win the popular vote, 37.3 million to 33.8 million. And they win the majority, 229 to 205. We're almost done here, guys. And then we jump to 2006. This is Bush's second midterm. And by then, the American people, I think, were getting tired of the war on terrorism in Iraq and Afghanistan. So they send Democrats into the House of Representatives. They give them a substantial majority of the popular vote, 52% to 44%, and a popular vote total of 42.3 million to 35.8 million. And Democrats win the majority, 233 to 202. Then you jump to 2010. Now you have George W. Bush. He went out of office. He was term limited. Barack Obama easily defeats John McCain in a landslide, and he gets a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate as a result of Arlen Specter leaving the Republicans and joining the Democrats in Pennsylvania, giving him a filibuster-proof majority to pass Obamacare and the Dodd-Frank financial services reform legislation. And you get to there for Obama's first midterms, and Republicans trounce the Democrats. They pick up 63 seats. They win the popular vote, 51.7% to 45%. And the popular vote was 44.8 million to 38.9 million. And the seats won were 242 to 193. So you win the popular vote, you win the majority. Okay, moving forward to 2014, Obama's in his second midterms. He easily defeated Mitt Romney for re-election in 2012. And now we're into his second midterms. And once again, Republicans are going to hit a high watermark for their majorities in recent history. They get 51.2% of the majority popular vote to 45.5%. They win the popular vote, 40 million to 35.6 million. They pick up 13 seats, and they have 247 seats in the House to 188 seats for the Democrats. And so that's pretty substantial. Republicans haven't had that high of a majority ever since 2014. We go to 2018. Now Donald Trump is the president. He defeated Hillary Clinton narrowly in 2016 in the Rust Belt states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And then we get to Trump's first midterms, and he's going to lose seats. As you would expect, Republicans lose 42 seats. Democrats pick up 41 seats. They win the popular vote, 53.4% to 44.8%. And they win the popular vote, 60.5 million to 50.8 million. And it was 235 to 199. You win the popular vote, you win the majority. And then we get to the most recent midterm elections of Joe Biden. He wins the election in 2020 during COVID. You have a huge recession. 25 million people lose their jobs in the blink of an eye. And then, by April, the economy is starting to reopen, and then millions of jobs are being added back to the economy. And by the time November comes around, you have mail-in ballots. Joe Biden wins narrowly in 2020. Probably because of the mail-in ballots. And then we get to his midterm election, and Republicans win the majority of the popular vote, 50% to 47%. And they get the popular vote, 54.2 million to 51.3 million. And they win the majority, 222 to 213. You win the popular vote, you win the majority in the House. So that gives a very, and then you can see through 2022, if you lead the generic congressional ballot, you win the popular vote. In 2018, if you lead the generic congressional ballot, you win the popular vote. In 2014, if Republicans lead the generic congressional ballot polls, then they won the popular vote. And you go to 2010, Republicans led the polls and they won the popular vote. And 2006, Democrats led the polls and they won the popular vote. And 2002, Republicans led the polls and they won the popular vote. So we should pay really close attention to the generic congressional ballot vote, because whoever wins the popular vote is most likely, 93% certain, going to win the House majority. The exceptions were 1914 and 1942. Where you can win the majority in the popular vote, but you don't get the majority in the House. That's a very rare instance. Usually, if you're winning nationally, all politics are national, you're going to win a majority of the seats, particularly in the House of Representatives. So we've gone through all the midterm elections. Now you know what I know about this, which is that you tend to lose seats if you're the White House incumbent party. In midterms, the question is how big of a loss that's going to be. Harder to determine. But Republicans only have 3 seats to lose. And if we look back again at the losses that tend to happen, they tend to average about 34. And the lowest loss was in 1962, when there was a loss at Democrats only lost 3 seats that time. There are the other exceptions. 2002, Republicans actually picked up 8 seats. 1998, Democrats actually picked up 4 seats. And 1934, Democrats actually picked up 9 seats. Otherwise, you're almost guaranteed to lose seats in the House of Representatives. Less so in the Senate. Again, once again, it usually depends on what states are coming up. And why don't we spend a little time on the 2026? We spent this whole time talking about the House of Representatives, but what about the 2026 Senate elections? I think you'll be interested in that, because it'll tell us, could Republicans, maybe they don't do as well in the House, but maybe they do better in the Senate. And we'll look at what seats are up here. All the pink seats are Republican seats where a Republican incumbent is running. Usually the incumbents tend to win. There's a Republican incumbent retiring, Mitch McConnell in Kentucky. And there's 3 Democrat incumbents who are giving up their seats in Minnesota, Michigan, and New Hampshire. So let's see what seats are up and why we think Republicans might be likely to hold on to them. Alabama, R plus 15, Alaska, R plus 8. That's Tommy Tuberville and Dan Sullivan would be favored to win in 2026. Arkansas, Tom Cotton, R plus 16. Yeah, he'd probably going to win. Now, Florida is interesting. You have a special election. Marco Rubio's Senate seat will be up with Ashley Moody, the former Attorney General of Florida, will be in an R plus 3 district. That's one to watch. Georgia was R plus 3 in 2024. John Ossoff is running to keep that seat. could Republicans pick up a seat there? Georgia went Republican in 2024. Does that mean that Ossoff could lose his seat in 2026? Possibly. But in Idaho, Jim Reach is probably not likely to lose his seat. That was R plus 18. Let's see, Iowa, Joni Ernst, R plus 6. You figure she's going to be reelected easily. That's what the board says here. Roger Marshall in Kansas. Mitch McConnell's retiring Kentucky. We'll see who Republicans nominate there. Bill Cassidy, R plus 12 in Louisiana. Let's see, R plus 1 in Michigan. Could Gary Peters' retirement help Republicans pick up a Senate seat in Michigan? We'll see. Mississippi, Cindy Hyde Smith, R plus 11. Steve Daines, R plus 11 in Montana. Pete Ricketts in Nebraska, R plus 13. Tom Tillis, R plus 3 in North Carolina. J.D. Vance's Ohio seat's going to come up in a special election. John Husted, R plus 6. Oklahoma, Mark Wayne Mullen, R plus 20. Lindsey Graham in South Carolina, R plus 8. Mike Rounds in South Dakota, R plus 16. Bill Haggerty, Tennessee, R plus 14. John Cornyn, Texas, R plus 5. He's getting a primary challenge from Bill Paxton, Attorney General there. And we'll see what happens in the primary. Usually when you have an open seat, the odds that the opposition can pick it up tend to go up a little bit. Shelley Moore Capito, West Virginia, R plus 22. And Cynthia Loomis, R plus 25, Wyoming. So Republicans are, generally speaking, defending a lot of seats that Trump won. In fact, all of them: Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Michigan. They're not going to be defending there. That's Gary Peters. But Mississippi, Montana, Nebraska, North Carolina, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, West Virginia, Wyoming. So to pick up the Senate, Democrats need to get 3 seats. And I'd say that the odds are somewhat low that they would do that. They have to get more than 3 seats, really. That would knock Republicans down to 50, and then you'd be 50-50 with J.D. Vance being the tiebreaker. So they actually have to pick up 4 seats. So can you find on this map where Democrats will pick up 4 Senate seats? I just don't see it. Maine, Susan Collins usually wins re-election with about 60% of the vote, and she's going to run again. So I think that the odds would favor her as well. So let's just, I think we've gone through most of these cases now. We've talked about the midterms, where they might stand for both the House of Representatives. Maybe Democrats pick up a majority. Maybe Republicans keep the Senate, something like that. That's what happened in 2018. That's what happened in 1982 with Ronald Reagan. He lost seats in the House, but he held on to the Senate. So we'll go jump back to my piece here. That again, if you win the popular vote, you're going to win the House of Representatives, most likely. So to win the House, a party should endeavor to win the national popular vote for the House. And to see who's winning the national popular vote, a good, recent, reliable gauge has been the generic congressional ballot polls. Pay attention to these polls. They might not tell you what you want to hear, but you should still pay attention to them, because it might tell you need to work harder if you're a Republican, or it might tell Democrats that, gee, we're only up by 1.5 points. Oh, gee, we better work harder. Something like that. It's there's lessons for both the incumbent party and the opposition party when it comes to these polls, and this is educational. So we're learning about what James Madison's prescription for periodic elections looks like. It tempers majorities of the president's party, like 90% of the time, 9 times out of 10 in the past century. And so to break the midterm jinx, there's just a 1 in 10 chance for the White House incumbents. Currently, President Donald Trump, and Republican, appears in the rare instance to take an exigent event or failure from the preceding party intervening and favoring the White House incumbent party in Congress in the off-year election. The real key comes down to motivation by voters, and so turnout and enthusiasm are the key considerations. Turnout and enthusiasm nationally. All politics are national. Recently, even with record midterm turnout for Republicans in 2022, winning 54.2 million votes. Let's look at that. That's a pretty interesting case. Republicans had a red wave. Everyone was predicting a red wave. If you go to the 2022 polls, they only were ahead 48%, though, to 45.5%. The Republicans think like, yeah, our get out the vote operations are going awesome. We're going to have record turnout. And they did. They got more people to vote than ever for Republicans in the midterm, but they only won 222 seats. Why? Democrats had a massive turnout operation in 2022, 51.3 million. And the popular vote was only 50% to 47%. And so Republicans didn't win that too big of a majority. And so they were scratching their heads. They're like, what did we do wrong? Turnout wise, they did everything right. And they, the American people were very frustrated with very high inflation, peaked at 9.1% in 2022, was definitely outpacing incomes. It would foretell that Joe Biden was going to be a one-term president. But in 2022, it only resulted in 9 seats for Republicans to pick up. How is that possible? Well, one of the things that happened that year was Democrats were motivated by an exigent event. Roe v. Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court, and a lot of Democrats showed up to vote. They might not have that year. They might not have been motivated. They might not have been paying attention, or they might have been upset about inflation. But a lot of Democrats came out to vote too, and they nearly beat the midterm jinx. So the Roe v. Wade was overturned. That had barred states from curtailing abortions. That was overturned by the Supreme Court, nearly beating the midterm jinx. Democrats were able to motivate lower propensity voters in the off-year election that usually favors the opposition party. As it is, we're still in a garden variety cycle where Democrats, being out of the White House, have about a 90% chance of picking up seats in the House of Representatives. And chances are they'll pick up at least 3 if they do pick up seats. And so they're probably likely to win the majority of the House of Representatives as it stands right now, unless something turns it around or changes it. For President Trump and Republicans, it will likely, barring an exigent event, something on the order of the Great Depression, the Cuban Missile Crisis, Monica Lewinsky, or 9/11, feel a lot like pushing on a string. As usual, stay tuned. This is Robert Romano, Executive Director with Americans for Limited Government and Americans for Limited Government Foundation. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a good day. First, though, I think we'll go to the chat. We see some chats here. And so we'll jump out of here. Hakeem Jeffries looks like he might be the next Speaker of the House. Can you believe it, guys? It's only April, and we can already figure that out. All right, let's see. Betsy Burns, we had better not lose the House. Jeffries is a very socialist person. Yeah, let's put him back on the screen there. Hakeem Jeffries, he's the House Minority Leader. We heard him on the video at the beginning of this, and he is likely to be the next House Speaker. If nothing changes right now, that Republicans are likely to lose seats in the House if they can't motivate their voters. Their voters are probably still high on the 2024 election, and they're going to think, we're already running everything. I don't need to go vote in the midterm election. So the low propensity voters are going to stay low propensity voters. They're going to they'll show up in 2028. And that's when the pendulum will swing and will actually favor Republicans, picking up a second term in the White House. Even though Donald Trump's in his second term, Joe Biden was actually the president the 4 years before 2020, from 2021 to 2024. So Republicans are actually only in their first term. So they'll be favored to win in 2028, maybe with J.D. Vance being the nominee. But for now, Mike Johnson, he might not be Speaker for too long unless something turns it around. And so Hakeem Jeffries, he's likely to be the next House Speaker. Let's see. Here's Betsy Burns again. Thanks for tuning in, Betsy. How are you doing? Jeffries is also a liar. He will say whatever he needs to that he thinks will win votes and hurt the Republicans. So the Democrats can pretty much meander their way without much form or substance into the majority. Just by singing the notes that they think they need to sing. He's talking about Social Security right now. I don't think anyone who's entitled to Social Security benefits will be denied Social Security benefits. Maybe some illegal aliens will lose their Social Security because they shouldn't even be in the country. Here's Betsy Burns again. Democrats are losing people because of their actions and their words. And so I would say maybe it could be that Democrats are very, very unpopular and that they're going to start losing. And it will be a carryover from 2024 to 2026. kind of like 1934 was a carryover from 1932, where Republicans lose in a landslide in 1932 during the Great Depression. Everyone still blamed the Republicans for the Depression in 1934. And so they elect even more Democrats in 1934. So maybe in 2024, everyone blames Democrats for the inflation and the crappy economy and the open border. And you get to 2026 and voters still blame Democrats for the crappy economy and the problems that resulted from illegal immigration. And then Republicans pick up seats in the House. And then Mike Johnson gets to be Speaker again. It could happen. I'm not saying that it's impossible. In fact, we went over the exceptions to the midterm jinx, 1934, 1998, and 2002. But it's still 90% likely that the Democrats will pick up seats in the House in 2026. All right. Betsy Burns. Robert, you are trying to jinx us. She says, that's jinx. Yeah. No, I hear you. I'm telling you what you need to know. This is educational. I'm not going to sit, just by telling you what the numbers are and what they've been for the past century. I mean, what did I go over? I went from 1906 to, 1906 to 2022. I mean, how many midterm elections is that? Or how many years is that? That's a lot. Well, I don't know. Let me pull up my calculator here. I kind of stink at math here. Let's see. Go to calculator. Let's see. 2022 minus 1906. So we went back through 116 years of midterm elections that show that the White House incumbent party, 90% of the time, loses seats in the House of Representatives in a midterm election. 90% of the time. We looked at 27 out of 30 elections. It's like, going to the casino and what's going to happen, and then you get to bet on it. That's all Hakeem Jeffries has to do to coast to victory in 2026. Practically nothing. All they have to do is motivate their people to vote. They're out of power. They don't have the House. They don't have the Senate. They don't have the White House. Now, Republicans, they're probably resting on their laurels. They think they've won everything. They don't have to fight very hard. And so, if anything, I'm not jinxing the Republicans. Maybe Republicans who are educated by this broadcast will figure out that they need to campaign twice as hard as normal in order to do well in the midterm elections. So no, I'm not trying to jinx anyone. It could be a call to action. You could look at it that way. Republicans need to wake up. They're likely to lose the midterms based on math and statistics and James Madison's Article 1 prescription for periodic elections in the House of Representatives every 2 years. In the Senate, every 6 years on a rotating basis. 1/3 of the Senate comes up every two years. You have these midterm elections. They are supposed to frustrate the majority. They're supposed to frustrate Donald Trump or Joe Biden or whoever the president happens to be. It is designed that way. That is our constitutional prescription that prevents one-party rule. So, and the alternative would be that the majority, whoever wins the White House, they win every election after that. But that's not what our system was designed to do. In fact, it was designed to do the opposite. So James Madison is laughing at all of us, saying, ha, ha, ha. My prescription of periodic elections is practically undefeated. 90% of the time, James Madison wins in the past 116 years. And if you go back before 1906, I'll go back. I have to go back. I'll do every midterm election going back to George Washington. And I will show you that this has been true even in the 1700s and the 1800s, that the White House incumbent party tends to lose seats in the House of Representatives in the midterm election. It's not a jinx, although I call it the midterm jinx. It is a well-known phenomenon. And so Republicans, there's Speaker Johnson, and he's about to take the gavel. He actually looks a little sad, but I think he's just very emotional because he's about to, be the speaker, and it was a very historic, momentous victory. Republicans need to get to work if they want, especially knowing that they might most likely lose the House of Representatives in 2026. They should get as many things as possible passed. They should get their budget passed in 25. They, big, beautiful bill, the tax cuts, make the Trump tax cuts permanent, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on, overtime. Americans for Limited Government supports all of those policies. They should pass that. They should do something with either the CR or the appropriations bills or the omnibus or whatever spending bill is going to pass. Stick some stuff on there too. Get some policy riders on that. And then in 2026, do another budget. Do more tax cuts. Do whatever. Make the border secure. Do other things. Try to boost fertility. Try to address our declining demographics that are making us go bankrupt, so that we get out of this death spiral of national debt that's going to probably go up 8% a year once you factor in recessions and wars, and it's going to keep going up, 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 up. National debt will probably hit about $76 trillion. Just going by the historic average growth rate of the national debt by 2035, 76 trillion. I bet you it hits about $100 trillion by 2039, but I'm not jinxing you. This isn't a jinx. This is just math. The national debt has been growing by over 8% a year since 1980, once you factor in recessions and wars. And so Republicans should probably do something about that. And if Democrats win, they should probably do something about it too, because we're nonpartisan. And, we just want Congress to do the right thing, regardless of whichever party's in power here. So, Robert, you're going to jinx us. I don't think so. I think I'm just telling it like it is, guys. Let's see. Rita Friday. We need to keep both houses. Another red wave. Get out the vote. And so, yeah, maybe Republicans watching this broadcast will be alarmed by what I've stated, which is just telling you what the history of midterm elections is, going back 116 years. It's that, if Republicans cannot motivate their base to turn out, and particularly lower propensity voters who don't tend to vote in midterms, but do tend to vote in presidential elections, if they can't find a way to activate those people, they will almost certainly lose seats in the House of Representatives. And so I'm going to sign off here. This is Robert Romano telling Republicans what they don't want to hear, Executive Director of Americans for Limited Government and Americans for Limited Government Foundation. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a good day. And happy Easter.